Welcome to the Real Estate Brief. I'm Adam, and today we're cutting through a lot of the noise that we find inside of the news. We're going to get to the truth that we find in the news and the headlines. We're going to look at the data, and I'll give you some of my observations and where I believe you can find opportunity, because I do believe that there is opportunity in every single news source and headline out there. So if you're ready to gain your real estate edge, let's dive into our first story. And that first story is going to be by Inman. Inman is going to talk about how a real estate agent that is new to the industry could actually have a little bit of a more benefit than an experienced agent. And we're going to get into why it's making that kind of argument. But what I want to do is, if you are an experienced agent and you've been in this industry for a long time, you need to be looking at yourself and saying, is this true what they're saying? And if it is, what do I need to change and adapt to in my business to then make myself more relevant so I don't lose any business? So if you're new, be paying attention, because this is going to give you some very practical things that you could be doing as a new agent to see success. So we all want to win in real estate in 2026. So let's see what Inman has to say about how to get there. This says real estate's Moneyball moment. Now, if you guys ever seen Moneyball and the concept of Moneyball and that, we'll talk about that. But this is what this article kind of uses that as the frame. So 5 reasons new agents have the edge in 2026. And this is by broker Zach Kennedy. Shares why 2026 is the year new real estate agents are poised to win big by trading flash for fundamentals. Just so you guys know, I will have, and I think I've already posted the links to all of single one of these articles that I'm going over with in the description of the YouTube video. So if you want to go back and dissect these and read these for yourselves, feel free to do so. Few of the news articles that I mentioned here, though, do come with a subscription. They do require you to pay to have access to them, Inman being one of them. I'm, again, not affiliate of them. I do like how they write and how they teach. The other one that I'll be mentioning later on is RIS Media. That as well is a subscription based as well. So just know that. But I encourage you, if you are a real estate agent, staying on point and subscribing to these type of news outlets can be very beneficial for your business. It's on point. It helps you kind of navigate changes going on. They have an email that goes out every single day. It talks about things happening in the news, and they have a lot of contributors that come in and write for them. So it's an overall big, broad perspective. It's still news and it's still media, so you still have to use logic, reason, and wisdom to then navigate it and not just make a bunch of assumptions on other people's opinions, but we still read it and we stay informed by doing so. So sorry for the little, bunny trail there, but I just wanted to kind of set the stage there that you do have access to these articles when I get done, and they'll be in the description. So I will pause for just a second here, though, because the first statement he said here about going back to the fundamentals. And so when you really summarize this entire article, that's what we're going to be leaning into. And the argument is simply put, is that an experienced agent's been doing this for a long time, has kind of embraced so many new things and so much new technology, and maybe has lost sight of some of the fundamental basics of being a real estate agent. And that's where that loophole is, or that opportunity is for a new agent to go into the fundamentals of being a real estate agent, which is ultimately what a client is really looking for. Someone that is knowledgeable, understands contracts, understands how to navigate it, and more importantly, is relational based. That's the premise behind this article. And so let's go ahead and start reading through this just briefly. For the past 6 years, real estate has been in a state of flux. Historically low interest rates and high transaction volume created a market where demand often outpaced skill. Deals were easier to close, and volume covered a lot of mistakes. That's true. In the past few years, agents, and I don't want to be too hard, but like these past 4 or 5 years, you didn't necessarily have to be a really good agent to make good money. You just had to be an agent and show up and be active to make good money. You could come into the office and there was opportunity everywhere. And that caused a lot of the agents who've been in this industry for a long time has never seen a bad market. If they've been in it for 5 years, they've not actually seen what a recession or a down market looks like. So they've embraced these concepts that might not be the true way of doing business for the long term. So that's the argument. If an agent's coming in this new, that's not the market that they're coming into that we had, the past 5 years, right? It's a completely different market where, and I use this cautiously too, where they actually have to work. Not saying we didn't work during this past 5 years. Trust me, we absolutely worked. It's just a different type of work. It's a different type of strategy. It's a different type of approach. And then you really begin to see who's actually a real estate agent when the market does begin to shift. All right. That period is over. As rates rose and transactions slowed, many established agents experienced whiplash. The systems and habits that worked in an easy market stopped producing results. However, agents licensed in the past 3 to 5 years are entering a moment unlike any other. They are not burdened by outdated habits or assumptions formed in an unusually forgiving market. This dynamic mirrors a turning point in professional baseball. Okay, so this is the money ball, right? All right, so the scenario is this. When the Oakland A's adopted sabermetrics in the early 2000s, they couldn't compete with the New York Yankees' $125 million payroll, right? So you have all this money pouring into the Yankees. The Oakland A's do not have that kind of cash. They don't have that kind of money. So correlation being, you got experienced agents that have a lot of money or have more money, can do more things than the new agent can do, right? So they changed how winning was measured. They focused on the specific actions that produce runs rather than paying for reputation. Pause for some squirrely joes. 5 reasons new agents have the edge in 2026. Now he's going to do a comparison between the Moneyball argument of the Oakland A's, and how you don't necessarily have to have the most money to be able to win. In 2026, new real estate agents face a comparable challenge. Here's why focusing on fundamentals gives emergent agents a Moneyball edge. You can't compete on budget, and you shouldn't try. Top producers built their advantages over time through volume and repeat business. Their marketing spend is a byproduct of that success, not the cause of it. New agents who try to match advertising budgets or team infrastructure too early often spend money before they understand where revenue actually comes from. The Oakland A's avoided this mistake by identifying undervalued actions that produced wins without requiring star salaries. For agents, this means shifting focus away from buying attention and toward building opportunity deliberately. The work should center on activities that create conversations, not on trying to look established before the business exists. So this is the part where I am stressing to all agents that I talk to is like, if you really want to measure the success of your business, measure the success of your CRM, the amount of context you have and the relationships that you have with those people in that database. That's a measure of your true success, because inside of that database is the relationships that give you referrals. And guess what? Having conversations with people, getting out in the public and serving the public and being available and being present doesn't cost you any money. It costs you time. You can argue gas and stuff, but it doesn't cost you actually marketing dollars. That is an opportunity. So if you are a brand new agent, your job is really to get to meet people, get out and get them to see you. If you are an experienced agent, you need to go back and look at your marketing budget. Where did you spend money? What is working and what is not working? Where did the money go? And did it have the ROI, the return on investment, right? You need to assess and see if what you spent money on has actually generated revenue for you above what it cost. So you need to audit your expenses. And as a new agent, you don't have any of that. But what you have is this, and you have your mind, and you have the relationship abilities and your communication styles. Those type of things get you in front of people that build your business. These are those fundamentals. So none of those things require a huge amount of money. So that's the argument here, right? All right, number 2, tradition often obscures reality. Tradition. And this is a bunny trail, but if you guys ever watched Fiddler on the Roof, it's like I can't see the word tradition without thinking of the movie Tradition. Anyway, check the movie out. It's kind of funny. All right, tradition often obscures reality. Baseball's scouting culture relied on intuition and assumptions about what a winning player should look like. Real estate has similar traditions. New agents are often told that success comes from cold calling or door knocking simply because those methods have always been used. A clear approach starts with understanding the actual structure of the business. Every real estate business operates through 3 core functions. Marketing creates opportunities, sales converts opportunities, operations manages opportunities. When you understand this framework, problems stop feeling random. A lack of leads is a result of a marketing problem. Poor conversion is a result of a sales problem. This ability to self-diagnose is critical for agents without large margins for error. So, and this is the thing, is there is a lot of advice. I mean, if you were to go right now and you were to go into YouTube or Google and you were to type in, I'm a new real estate agent, how should I start building my business? You are going to get thousands of suggestions, right? Going back to their point, and I'm not saying any of those things that he even suggested there are bad, like the cold calling, door knocking, those type of things. For certain people that works, and I'm actually a fan of all of those, right? I think there is a need for that. But the reality though is a clear approach is going to start with just simply understanding the actual structure about how you grow a business. All right. So you got to market. Well, how do you market if you don't have a lot of money? Well, you get in front of people and you let everybody know that you're going out to coffee with, that you're in real estate, and you have casual conversation with this core sphere of influence. You know, if you could find 20, 30 people of your closest friends that would recommend you to other people, even if they're not thinking about buying, you are marketing yourself, right? And then by doing that, you're going to go into the next part. You're going to get some sales out of those conversations. You're going to get some business out of those conversations. And then once you start having that, you got to start working on the operations. Like, how do I structure this? What kind of systems I got to put in place? The experienced agent can get so confused on the marketing and all these different suggestions, and they've implemented all these different things. What they forget to do is audit what is actually working. And you'll hear me all the time say this type of stuff using the word audit. And, you know, in our world, in the business world, audit sounds horrible. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm getting audited. Well, it's really a very good accountable term. And we need to audit many aspects of our life, how we use our time, how we use our money, what we use our marketing dollars on, we need to audit how we use our dialogue when we talk to clients. We need to audit our lives and see if what we're doing is actually working. January is an excellent time to do that. It's a time to go back and self-reflect on what worked and what didn't work. So audit that. And you need to eliminate the marketing that doesn't work. You need to eliminate the systems and stuff that's bogging down the system that is not actually helping you close more deals and get you in front of people. That's the opportunity, right? That's where it's at. All right. Number 3, appearances are not progress. The A's roster did not look impressive by traditional standards, fueling skepticism even as results improved. New agents face similar pressure to appear successful early through polished branding or visible busyness. Those signals can create the illusion of momentum without producing actual closings. Marketing should not exist to impress peers. It should exist to create opportunity. The most reliable approach is content that consistently demonstrates value across 4 areas: listings, community, expertise, and branding. This builds the familiarity and trust required so that sales conversions do not begin cold. Now, this comes down to as a new agent, where you feel like you're looking at the experienced agent and you see them driving the nicest car, they're completely polished and put together, and you think you need to be looking like that. Let me say, there is an element. Yeah, you got to have a car clean, right? You get your car needs to be clean, not as much as it used to be, at least the outside. We don't cart people around in our cars as much as we used to. But the reality is that an image is important, but it's not what actually determines if you're going to be successful in real estate. What truly determines that is how you handle the person, the relationship that you build with the person, how you market yourself to the person, how when you go to a listing appointment, how you communicate your value to the seller, and how you're going to actually represent them and help them get their house sold. That's what they're more interested in. They are interested in the value that you're bringing to the table, not how you look. Yes, don't go in looking like a bum, simply put. But it doesn't mean you have to have all the high-end stuff and have a certain look, because that's not going to be the most reliable approach to growing your business. It's a distraction from what ultimately truly matters, and that's serving people and serving them extremely well and working on building their trust. And even pause for just a second to speak to new agents. Don't feel like you have to have the answer to every single question. You do not. You have a team, more than likely, behind you as a real estate agent that you could call up and get answers to. So you need to communicate that to people you're working with. You know what? You're right. I might be a new agent, but let me tell you about my team that's behind me, that is doing this alongside me, that comes alongside me to help me sell your property, and how good they are. You're not just hiring me, you're hiring my team, right? So there's benefits there, but that's great point. Great point. Number 4, control matters more than access. The A's had to succeed inside a system built to favor wealthier teams. Agents today face a similar reality where large platforms influence how consumers search for homes. While these platforms provide access to opportunities, relying entirely on rented attention creates risk. Sustainable businesses are built on systems agents control: their marketing message, their sales process, and their operational support. This requires using tools in service of a clear strategy rather than outsourcing the strategy itself. We rely too much on these portals to give all the information. Here's the thing. The portals can tell you the square feet. They can tell you the bedrooms. They cannot talk to you, though, about your needs. They can't ask them questions about what is it about a kitchen that you like? What is it about a bathroom? What kind of distance do you need to be from schools? Like they can't ask the engaging questions that is relational. So that's where you want to lean into. Like you want to lean in to ask those qualifying questions. Like what exactly are you looking for? And if we found this type of home, how would that fit and change your life? Like these open-ended questions that create dialogue, that give you insight into what they're looking for. These are all very important conversations that none of the portals and none of those things can do. The other side of the coin, though, is that you're going up against, if you're a new agent, you're going up a lot of times against an experienced agent, but sometimes you're going up against an entire team, right? Let me give you a little secret about teams. There is a lack of relationship built inside of a team, all right? And this is not a knock against teams. I think there are some teams out there that do it extremely well. I will say there's this crazy movement where everybody thinks they got to be on a team or form a team and this kind of stuff. And to be honest, and just in my opinion, some are good, but a lot of them are negating the actual reason they're in real estate, and that is to serve that client well. They might do great at communicating all this kind of stuff, but I've noticed a lot of teams negate the actual relationship aspect. Most of your team leaders and things like that don't even know the client that well. Their buyer's agent, their seller's agent might know them better. And that's great, but it's not really delivering the service sometimes, and not in every case, but often I see this. And so as a new agent, knowing that you might not have a team, you might not have all these resources at your disposal, but what those teams cannot necessarily address is your personal attention to detail. Remember, you have more time than they have, and you can really lay in heavy. You can lay in heavy in the relationship aspect of it and treat that client like a royalty and make them feel really good about working with you and deliver an exceptional service. And trust me, that will build a business. That will build a business more than anything else. All right. Number 5, measuring movement over effort. The Moneyball strategy did not deliver immediate validation. Results followed only after consistency. Sales improve when agents measure movement instead of just effort. Every prospect follows the same progression: conversion, appointment, client, contract, closing. That's your process, right? Conversion, you got to convert the lead. You got to then set the appointment to get that person to trust you. And in our age now, buyer agreements, listing appointments, that kind of stuff. The client contract, the client, you now have a client, and then you have a contract, right? You now got the client, you now write up the contract, and then that leads to closing. That's the cycle. And when you have those 5 categories, and I actually did a whole lesson on this at a conference once, talking about like the 5 focuses of real estate. And that's the 5 focuses. Like what you're trying to do is when you're trying to look and assess and audit your business, and when you're trying to look at it objectively, you're looking at your system. You're saying, is there something inside of my industry that's going to help me, measure my movement and not my effort by tracking some of the things that I need to do, right? So am I focused on the right things? Is my system that I have in place helping me to convert? Is it taking the lead that I have and helping me to convert that lead? Like, is my drip campaigns, is my CRM, is my text messaging, is my phone calls, is the way I deliver myself and the scripts I use helping me to convert the leads that I get? And then what is my objection handling when I set that appointment? When I sit down in front of somebody, how do I get to know that person? What questions am I asking? How am I being relational? Am I actually doing a good job at those appointments? Is there some kind of technology I can use to help me stay more on point? Is there a listing presentation that I need to have, or a buyer presentation, a buyer consultation, these type of things? Those are all the things you need to audit to check and see if you're doing a good job. So conversion, appointment. So focusing on those 2 things. Then how is it that I handle my clients? What is it like to take somebody that's never baby bought before? And what is my process to help that person throughout the entire process? What kind of experience do I want to deliver to them, right? And then I want to make sure that now, once we get to that point, we write up a contract and we're under contract. Did I explain the contract well? Do they understand it fully? Did I take my time explaining to what that is? So now they're ready to close. And then after you close, what's your follow-up plan? How do you stay in communication with them? How do you keep cultivating that relationship? How do you ask for referrals, right? When you start talking about how to build a real estate business, those 5 things, to be honest, are the things that all that matter. That five process is all that matters. That brings it all together. That makes it all work. So when you're thinking about your business and what you want to integrate, you're trying to find things that address those 5 things and make you do better at those 5 things. Anyway, they nailed something that made me think through a actual class I taught years ago about that very thing. Now it was worded a little bit different, but that's the same concept. It's the five sections of a real estate business. In 2026, as the market stabilizes, flash matters less than fundamentals. The agents who succeed will not be the biggest or the loudest. They will be the ones who understand how opportunities are created, converted, and managed. The Oakland A's did not win by trying to outspend the Yankees. They won by changing the game. New and emergent agents who focus on these fundamentals are positioned to punch above their weight at a level the industry hasn't seen in years. And I'll lean into this a little bit more because the reality is, the past few years, AI has inserted itself into our industry. All this technology has been like the crazy new thing. Social media, past 10, 15 years. So we're all on those things, right? And what is being craved in this next generation is relational. Matter of fact, I was reading a whole article about like with social media. The social media use is actually down for the younger generation on the way that we understood what social media is. So the social media that we understand, like Facebook, Instagram, and that kind of stuff, is changing a little bit. What's beginning to happen is this younger generation is creating smaller, like little silos of chosen people to congregate with. So instead of having like a Facebook page where it's just broadcasted out to everybody, and you have these superficial like kind of relationships where you like, comment, and share, they're building these silos of groups, like in Discord or in private groups on different social media platforms, where it's a closed wall that those that they don't want in can't get in, and those they allow in can get in and converse. So they are craving a community that understands them, that you understand, and that they can rely upon. So the move for real estate agents and moving into the next few years is understanding these pockets of silos and how to be very hyper relational, like be involved with the community and have relationships. So you are invited to these smaller pockets of communities, right? The broadcasting social media thing is kind of dying. You still see that. And matter of fact, YouTube tends to be a big anchoring point for that. But the reality is it's changing rapidly. So anyway, that was a long time talking about this article, but I just thought it was a lot of meat in there. We're going into the weekend. Hopefully you guys can take some time this weekend to kind of go through and assess your own business and audit some of those things. I would absolutely encourage you to do that. Now, let me just give you again, I'm gonna wrap this up real quick on this article. We'll jump to the next one. But what I would do, and this is kind of on top of it, but I would go through your MLS and I would audit the MLS data today to find what I would call like a hidden micro market. And what that means is I like to go in there and find the inventory that has the lowest amount of inventory, but still has a high demand, right? So simple one, like if you used a ranch house, right? Is there only, is there a low amount of 3-bedroom, 2-bath ranch houses on the market currently, right? If that's what's low on the market right now, but yet that falls within the average selling price of a home, that is a great opportunity to go out and get listings. So I would say get in your MLS, find like what the average selling price is, and then take that average selling price, match it up with buyer demographics, go back and look at your office's past sales and find out how many bedrooms, how much square feet, locations, that kind of stuff. Do a little bit of research this weekend and figure out like where people are buying and what the value of the home is that they're buying. And that tells you exactly where to spend some time trying to get listings, because if that market is low and your demand is high, that's opportunity. That's all I'm saying. So new experienced agent, there you go. That's some opportunity for you guys. Okay, let me jump in now. We're going to go into article number 2 here, and I'm gonna burn through these so we won't spend too much time. You just sitting here yammering on. So hopefully you guys got some value out of that whole entire article. Let me know in the comments kind of any thoughts and comments that you might have in regards to that. That would be cool to hear. But a lot of information there. Hopefully you guys can take some of that and do something great with it. All right, so this next one is Zillow. This is offered by Zillow. It says typical home should be affordable in 20 major markets by year's end, the most since 2022. It says trifecta. So this article is going to cut through a lot of the the concepts of, where the market's at and how affordable is it and what's that affordability gap look like. Get it. Some of the stuff can be kind of boring here and, kind of go through this. But guys, I want you to think like a real estate agent that is constantly asked the question, how's the market? Because you are. So that's how we got to, we had to do our job and pay attention to what's being said out there. December 2025 housing market report. Here's the key takeaways. All right. I mean, this might be where I just kind of read through this and just skim real quick. Kara, I guess maybe you just pronounce it Kara Ing. This was written yesterday, 2026. The key takeaways was this: home buying is becoming more affordable in more cities, with Zillow forecasting that 20 of the 50 largest U.S. metros will be affordable to buy in by the end of 2026, the most since 2022. Mortgage payments are easing but still strain budgets, as monthly costs are $177 lower than their October 2023 peak, yet still require 32.6% of median household income nationally. Now, that's still pretty high. If you were to go back to look at the affordability index over time, maybe it shows it in this article, I don't know. But the most affordable market was where the median income was right around the 26 to 27% required to have a loan, the median household income. That's when you actually had a really strong market. The problem is, though, is that also can trigger inflation and that kind of stuff too. So there's percentage margins here, give or take, still looking pretty good. We always said like 30% of your income roughly, allocate for housing. So we're still higher than that, but things are beginning to change. Affordability is on track to improve without a price crash, as Zillow expects home values to rise 1.9% in 2026, an increase in 41 of the largest metros, supporting homeowner equity while buyers regain footing. Now, if you're in a smaller rural town, look, I understand that when you start talking about metro, you kind of tune out just a little bit. But here's the thing. Watching what happens in big metro cities is very important because it's a trickle-down economics, right? You see something happen in a big city with a huge populace, and those adjustments begin to take place there. That puts pressure inside of that market, and then it shifts out into the more rural areas. So when you start seeing this in 2026, if this is true, what they're predicting, then 2027, towards the end of 2026, you'll start seeing that into your areas if you are in a more rural area. So this is typically the way it's always flowed, right? So yeah, mortgage. Okay, Zillow expects slow but steady home value growth, falling mortgage rates, and rising incomes to contribute to a nationwide improvement in affordability this year. In this case, affordability means a mortgage payment on a typical house, priced at Zillow's Home Value Index, that doesn't require more than 30% of the median household income. When housing costs rise above that 30% threshold, they become a financial burden, leaving less in the budget for other essentials such as groceries and transportation. That's true, right? Now, if you go back earlier this week in another live show I did, we talked about the affordability gap, and I talked about how income is rising up. The inflation is still happening, but it's cooled way down. And then there's more incentives and stuff entering into the market, and then you factor in the interest rates getting cut down just a little bit. Those metrics, all those things happening, all add up to bring more balance to this, right? Prices soared starting in 2020, and affordability declined sharply in 2022. Inflation went through the roof. We all know that. When mortgage rates doubled, affordability reached all-time lows. Key assumptions for Zillow forecast. Mortgage rates fall to near 6%, where Zillow expects them to end the year. Although mortgage rates are notoriously volatile and even farther declines are possible. Home values grow by 1.9%, with the typical U.S. home value ending the year at $365,795, higher than in 2025, but rather subdued compared to long-term norms. Incomes are expected to rise by 3.3% this year. All right. So again, what I was just saying there is like there's this crazy adjustment going on, and it's on all fronts, right? It's all, nothing drastically is happening. It's a slow change. The inflation is slowly coming back down to a lower percentage of increase. The mortgage rates kind of came down just a little bit, right? We got really close to the 6. Matter of fact, if you go back to last Friday, it dipped for just a little bit during the day at 5.99. It settled around 6.16. So we're still very low 6, which is probably where we're going to stay at for quite a while. But at the same time, we have federal movement. I don't know if this article is going to talk about this, but I'll pause and just mention this a little bit. Is, the federal side of things, and if you pay attention to the news, and I'm not getting political at all. I don't really care care about politics. I pay attention, I vote, and I do what I need to do there. And I pay attention, I listen. But as far as parties, I'm not going to get into that here. But what I will say is Trump is making moves into the housing sector, and he's making statements in regards to how he's planning on doing that. A lot of the stuff that he says is a test. If I make a statement, what is the response? And then if that response comes back negative or positive, determines what I do. So you got to understand that that's how that usually works. Because remember, the economy mostly is dictated by emotion. The emotion of the people, if they're comfortable with it or if they're not comfortable with it, they decide then what they want to do. So by throwing out statements that could be extreme, can test the market and the response to that, and gives his advisors and other people inside of the federal government to then assess what the overall consensus would be emotionally of the American people, which then determines if they make regulations or not. So a couple things he did. A few months ago, he touted the idea of doing a 50-year mortgage. All right. I actually had a whole video about how that's really not a good idea, to be honest. A 50-year mortgage, just you're putting somebody in life in debt for a long time. Is there a use case for it? You can make the argument and say, yeah, because you can get a lower payment, and most people don't stay in their homes for a long period of time. But the reality is most people are going to be having a lot of debt and not gaining a whole lot of equity at all with the 50-year mortgage. So he threw that out there. It was met with a lot of resistance from a lot of people, all sides of the aisle. So that flopped. He's now made a statement. He's backtracked. He's not going to do that. It's off the table. But then he made a statement about banning large institutions from buying up residential homes. He made a big statement about that. And I made a whole video talking through my talking points about how that's a good thing. Now, some economists will side with the other side and say it doesn't really affect much at all, right? Because those big, large hedge funds don't own that much a percentage of real estate. And that's true. They don't. They're 1% to 3% in the entire ownership of private residential homes. But left unchecked and more money pouring in could have a long-term effect. And it's still a percentage of home sales that still could be beneficial to us. So it was met with a mixed emotion. So that's still on the table. That's still being talked about because it still has some relevancy. So we're paying attention to all these things, right? So he's floating all these type of things. Then what did he do? Well, he threw out another whole statement about how the feds are now going to be bringing in billions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars into the market to buy bonds off of these banks so to free up more cash into the market. So he's going to be acquiring, some funds to go back into the federal government. Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac will be holding these debts. And then that frees up more cash for banks to then be able to lend. So that bond market yield changes and everything like that. I'll probably do another video on that, explain how that works later. But the whole point is by doing that could drive the interest rates even lower. So this is all the things that's adjusting these little micro adjustments here and there. Nothing's going to be crazy significant, but that's where we find ourselves. All right. I'm not going to go into any more of those numbers, actually. So let me just kind of give you some talking points through this and just some action items that you can use. What I would say is I would go into your CRM, into your database, and call 5 people, right? And do that every single day. And I would, when I have those conversations, maybe you pick 5 buyers, right? You talk to 5 buyers and you talk about, the cost of ownership. You go through the affordability and what that looks like. You explain to them what I just talked about, right? You talk about what the cost of actually waiting to buy a home looks like. Like if I bought now versus waiting later, and, having those conversations, make that a point, not to actually close a deal or to get a buyer or seller, but just to connect with at least 5 people. So I would also do this. I would commit to a specific time every single day to prospect for every single day, and at least every week have a market update video or post or something talking about what the market is doing. Be the source of information. I'm trying to give it here as a more tangible way for you guys to take this. Now, let me give you a little tip too. You can take my video or any other video out there on YouTube, right? And you can copy that URL, the website address for this video, not the channel, nothing like that. But you can take the URL. Once I'm done live streaming and you go to the YouTube channel and you click on the video, a URL will load in your browser if you're doing it on the computer. You copy that URL and you go into like ChatGPT or Gemini. Probably Gemini is a little bit better because it's tied to Google. Since this is a transcript show, right? They transcribe what I say, every word I say. You can go into that AI system and give it a prompt. You can say, give me action items from this show, right? Or from this YouTube video with this link. You could say, look, give me daily action items. Hey, or extract social media post from what was said in this live stream and then paste that URL in there and hit go. And guess what? AI is going to analyze the entire transcription of what I'm saying here or any video you want, and it will give you action items from that. Amazing little tip, right? That's a good way to use AI. Now, I will caution you though, it's AI, it's not you. So go back through what it generates, turn it into sounding like you would sound, and also confirm and make sure it's correct. But it is a good way to get content out of this without having to spend a whole lot of time, right? And that's a way to kind of do these market updates. Use what I'm saying here and share it, right? By all means, do it. All right, let me jump into the next one here. Mortgage application. This will be a really brief, short one, to be honest. I just wanted to emphasize this. Mortgage applications beat winter slump, soar 28%. Lower rates, including the 30-year fixed rate declining to 6.18%, sparked an increase in refinance applications, said MBA VP and Deputy Chief Economist Joel Kahn. So I switched up my notes here. Sorry. Yeah. So here we are. So what we do know is applications have been beating a lot of the winter slump, right? So we do know that we've seen this happen. When you start seeing interest rates kind of go down, you do begin to see more refinancing applications, right? Because what we need to think about is, even though, and I've talked about this many times, like there's like what we call like a lock-in effect. And I keep mentioning this because it's still a thing. And matter of fact, it's funny. I actually heard an economist, and I really respected economists. And I actually agree with him on so many things. But sometimes, let me just say this, sometimes people can get so caught up in looking at data and the numbers that they miss the actual real life application of the numbers. And he actually made a statement saying, like, I don't believe the lock-in effect is even a thing. Well, okay. The lock-in effect is this. Those that bought 5 or 6 years ago bought at a really low rate, 2.5%, 3.5%, 4%, right? Then now their interest rate spiked up to 7%, and they are now feeling like they're locked into the home that they live in, because if they were to sell this house, they would then have a higher interest rate. His argument is people aren't doing that. That's not the way they're thinking, because they would sell that house, make equity, put it into another house, even if it's a higher percent interest rate. They're not living there a long period of time. It doesn't really make much of a difference, right? And okay, he's right to some degree, but here's the part where you just read data that you miss a very significant point. You miss that people are emotionally driven. We are emotional creatures. So when I have a home that is 2.5%, 3.5% interest, I am emotionally thinking to myself, oh, the feeling of this feels so good. I go around and I brag to everybody how low my interest rate is, right? I don't want to lose bragging about that. I like saying I only have a 3% interest rate. I don't want to be a part of the other group that says they have a 6 or 6.5, right? So there's a psychological aspect to this. So sure, if you look at the data, you would say, yeah, lock-in effect is probably not a thing. But if you look at the human emotion, you'd say, yeah, it probably is a thing, right? So that's the difference. But now what we are seeing though is now we're many years beyond that 3.5%, 4% interest rate lock-in. So now you have people that have 6.5%, 7.5%, and even some 8% mortgages. That now we've been so many years beyond removed that now this interest rate going down to 6%, that's actually a good interest rate for a lot of people that bought in the past couple of years, right? Now they are going to refinance. So that's why we see a jump of 28%. There, bring context to this whole entire article, I guess. It says the MBA's latest weekly mortgage application survey found that the market composite index, a measure of mortgage loan application volume, grew 28.5% on an adjusted basis and 65% on an unadjusted basis. All right, we're going to skip on down. Okay, as for shares of activity, the refinance share of mortgage activity increased to 60.2% of total applications from 56.6% the previous week. The adjustable rate mortgage ARM share of activity increased to 7% of total applications. So, because a lot of people might be on ARMs to kind of gotten a lower rate when they bought maybe 3 or 4 years ago at 7.5% or 8%. So they're refinancing outside of their ARM. It's only at 7%. The FHA share of total applications decreased to 19.2% from 20% the week prior. The VA share of total application decreased to 16.1% from 17.3%. And the USDA share of total applications remained unchanged at 0.4% from the week prior. just a snapshot about what's going on as far as the refinance market goes, as well as what this rate does. And it's something for us to pay attention to, because here's the thing. This is where the opportunity is for you. We are always looking for ways to make a touch with past clients. And what a service it would be to understand this data, to go back to all of your sales. So call every lead and every closing that you had in the past year or two and talk to them. Have you seen what's happened in the mortgage industry yet with the interest rates? You bought a house from me XYZ ago, and the interest rate's now close to 6, and you're at 6.5%, 7%, right? So now maybe, just maybe, it's beneficial for you to refinance. Why not have that conversation with your client that bought from you a few years ago? What a great service that is, that you have their best interest in mind. And then you never know. They might be thinking like, well, you're right, man. If that interest rate's that low, I've been eyeballing this house over here. We were on Zillow the other day and we looked at this house, and maybe it's actually more feasible for us, instead of refinancing this, sell this with the equity, roll that over into another property and just get a lower interest rate over there, right? That conversation. Go back and start making calls. It's a great, great thing to do. This is what we're looking for. We're looking for opportunity in the boring data. Like if you were to just read this article, a lot of people would just skim over this and be like, yeah, I'm not all that numbers. Okay, yeah, it's 28% lower, whatever. But then you're not stopping and thinking critically about how you can actually leverage this information to generate business for yourself, right? So that's the whole argument here. So I would do that. And then I would also go back. I would go. Sorry, my thing is making noise. I would also go back and remind like anybody that were kind of like on the fence, just kind of looking around apps and, sent you lead, you got a lead from them or whatever. I would have a conversation with them too about the interest rate and the affordability. I would show them, the numbers, what it actually looks like, especially if they're renting right now, they're living somewhere. I would get into conversations and have more and more conversations like that. I would absolutely do that. Okay. Let's jump into the final article of the day. This one is just for fun. This was just something I wanted to kind of pull, just as a conversation, just about what's going on. This is fascinating to me. I can't even fathom having this much land, but here we go. It says billionaire Rams owner Stan Kroenke, I hope I'm saying that wrong. Sorry if I'm not, becomes America's biggest private landowner. All right. Get this. All right. Los Angeles Rams owner Stan Kroenke is now America's largest private landowner after buying nearly 1 million acres of New Mexico ranch land in December, according to the land report. Can you imagine? 1 million acres. Other bold-faced names like Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, and Ted Turner also made the annual rankings of private landowners. What's to make of that? We should probably pause and ponder that one just a little bit. Why are these billionaires buying land? Billionaire entrepreneurs are gaining ground as farmland investing becomes increasingly popular and more heirs choose to sell legacy properties. So these billionaires realize that we're not making any more land, and there's value in land, and there's not value much in me just sitting on this piles and piles of cash in the bank or investments other than land. Let's put some of this money in land. Because why? Oh, legacy property owners. In other words, people that's owned this property for years, hundreds of years, maybe even, the heirs don't care and they want to cash out and take the money. So there's opportunity. So these billionaires are pouring in, buying up 1 million acres of land at a time. That's just wild. All right. Stanley Kroenke owns the world's most valuable sports empire, including the NFL's Los Angeles Rams. Now, the sports tycoon is also America's largest private landowner, according to the newly released land report. At 2.7 million acres, 2.7 million acres, Kroenke's holdings are larger than Yellowstone National Park, or the equivalent of roughly 2 million football fields. Can you imagine? I mean, just what kind of playland has he got? Kroenke bought nearly 1 million acres of New Mexico ranch land in December from the family behind industrial conglomerate Teledyne, per the land report. According to the trade publication, the Singleton Ranches transaction is the largest land purchase in the U.S. in more than a decade. Late Teledyne founder Henry Singleton started his namesake ranch in the 1980s, and it's grown into one of the nation's largest cattle and horse breeding operations. So investing in kind of a company in some ways. Let's do this. Let's just for fun. This is Casual Friday, right? So let's join me in this conversation. Let's go in. Let's just copy this. Let's see if we can get our eyes on what this might look like. I'm just kind of curious. Let's see what we got. Tillendale Technologies. It says Teledyne Technologies is a diverse industrial technology conglomerate providing advanced electronics, imaging, and sensing solutions for aerospace, defense, marine, medical, and industrial markets. Let's type in ranch. Let's see what we can find. So that does not look like that is not New Mexico. The ranch, Tennessee. Yeah, I don't know. Did I get the wrong name? I don't know. Anyway, that's really cool. The acquisition vaulted Kroenke from 4th to 1st in the Land Report's annual ranking of the country's 100 largest private landowners, leapfrogging the Immersion lumber family as well as billionaire media moguls John Malone and Ted Turner. Most of the top 100 landowners aren't bold-faced names like Kroenke. The Emerson family, which ranks second, owns an estimated 2.44 million acres through their forest products company, Sierra Pacific Industries. The Singleton family, which sold the New Mexico ranches to Kroenke, still made the cut at 98th place with 171,000 acres. That's a minimal amount. However, investing in U.S. farmland has become popular among the ultra-wealthy as a hedge against inflation and stock market volatility. From 2019 to 2024, farmland values have grown at an average annual rate of 5.8 or 2% after inflation, according to the U.S. Department of Agriculture. I mean, you think about that. That's the thing. This validates like the importance of real estate, right? I mean, that's a better return than they could get in other investments, right? So that's the point. They have this money. Why not throw it in something that's actually going to have a higher return? So it's a complete. Makes perfect sense to me. Billionaire entrepreneurs built from Bill Gates to Philip Anschutz are increasingly buying up swaths of land for farming, ranching, and forestry. Gates ranks 44th overall on the land report list with 275,000 acres, but is still the largest private owner of U.S. farmland specifically. So he owns it privately. So that's a big difference. Owned through his investment group, Cascade Investment, Gates Farmland grows soybeans, corn, cotton, rice, and even potatoes used for McDonald's French fries. Wow, this is interesting. See, I find this kind of stuff just fascinating. And to be honest, like one of the cool things about reading articles like this is great conversation starters just with people in general. Like you could take this and throw it on social media and be like, oh, did you guys hear the Rams owner bought like more land and now he owns more land than Yellowstone National Park? That's just fascinating. That creates a conversation. Kroenke has been able to grow his land holdings relatively quickly by acquiring massive ranches that have been held in families for decades or even generations. He built one of his largest ranches, Wagoneer Ranch in North Texas, for $725 million in 2016, ending 160 years of family ownership. While these one-of-a-kind ranches are in short supply, more are hitting the market as heirs decide to sell rather than carry on the family business. I mean, that's exactly what we see. I mean, that's happening in my area. There's so much land I would love to have, but it's been in the family for so long. Like, I don't think I'd ever get it. But anyway, what's the opportunity here? You know, hey, if you're in one of these areas and there's big ranches that's been in the families for a long time, well, you know, hey, why not reach out to them and talk to them about selling? Maybe you can get, be an agent in one of these big transactions. How awesome would that be? I would say, just to be funny, is practice selling dirt. learn how to value property based on its future potential use too. So, get good at selling dirt. It looks like it could be very wealthy, or it could give you some money. All right, guys, awesome. I do thank you guys for being here. Look, I kept it within an hour. I was wondering if I would or not. So, I hope you guys have a great weekend. I do appreciate it as always. You guys coming here. I do not take it for granted that anybody, especially if you stayed for the entirety of this, you just hearing me talk. I really appreciate that. Thank you. This is just a good discipline that I'm doing for myself, and hopefully you guys get benefit from it, because my goal is to do this for myself, but in turn, build a community that we get to do it together with, to help us all stay on point. I know it's helping me stay on point. going through this process. I'm reading things with, way more intentionality behind reading it than I used to. I'm able to recall things, when I'm asked questions way better by doing this. Hopefully you're seeing that as well. So, all right. Awesome. Have a great weekend. This is your real estate brief for today. If you found this helpful, please consider hitting the like button to tell YouTube you would like more of this type of content. And would you consider subscribing to join a community of real estate agents that are focused on building a business that is relationship focused first? And also, if you know somebody that could benefit from this type of content, consider sharing this video and my channel with them. And remember, there's always so much more that could be said. See you guys next week. Take care.